Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Blue Sky session at the Festival of Innovation this year. I am really excited to be joined by Kimberly Beneville, co-founder of Beneville Studios, Sam Bompas, director of Bompas Parr, and Ben Wilson, head of architecture and concept design at MSC Cruises. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
So, Kimberly, could you just give us a bit of an overview of what you're working on at the moment?
Absolutely. It's a really exciting time for Area 15 right now. Really deep in our expansion. On our current campus, we have Lionsgate's John Wick opening soon, and we also have Super Plastics Dopamine Experience opening. So that's on our current campus, and then we're also expanding 40 acres. So we're pretty much doubling our size and creating an entire immersive district in Las Vegas. And we have really thrilled. We have Universal's Horror Unleashed. That'll be our anchor experience for the second district.
So not that much at all, just a couple of
Absolutely, yeah. It's wonderful. It's exciting. It's a ton of work, but yeah, we're all systems go. And yeah.
Fantastic. And Sam, what are you working on at the moment?
Hello. Well, wild trajectory from making wobbly jelly to now getting the opportunity to make permanent attractions. We're working on about 5 or 6 with about 50 wider projects. But like first, top of the list is our Museum of Shakespeare, which is opening next year. It is spectacular. It's working with the ultimate IP, Shakespeare itself. There's a lot of pressure on because there'll be people that spent their whole lives studying the bard coming through the door on the first day, but also people who've never had that experience before. So how do you do an experience that is relevant to all of those people?
I'm so excited to come along. I love Shakespeare, so I'm excited to see what you've come up with. And Ben, what are you working on?
A totally different world, cruise ships. So here at MSC Cruises, we have in our midst MSC World America, which will be delivered east next year. And at the same time, we have her sister ships coming, and we are working on at least 3 or 4 different projects at the moment, all slightly in different design stages, but some of those are focused on new restaurants, some of those are focused on new lounges or bars, some of them are new accommodation. Our floating hotel is always evolving, so we have a lot on, and that's all that we can speak about as well, because obviously there's always things in the pipeline as well. So
always. But I mean, you know, for the cruise industry, it really is sort of taking off, and there are so many sort of aspects of visitor attractions that are coming into the cruise lines at the moment. So what do you look for when you're kind of bringing a new experience into a cruise, and what are those challenges?
I mean, our first step is to listen and understand what it is that the guest wants. So we have a fleet of over, I think, 23, 24 ships now, and the fleet is nearly, well, it's just over 20 years old. So that's nearly a ship every year. So that's how busy we are. So we have a lot of ships, a lot of guests, so a lot of data to mine. So we've got a lot of analysis that we can look at to understand what's working for us on board, what needs to improve from either a guest experience or a crew experience. At the end of the day, if the crew are not happy, then that's going to unfortunately pass on to the guest as well. But then it's pairing that up with market trends. So getting out there, seeing new things, and trying to use your foresight and wisdom to anticipate what is essentially going to be ready in 3 or 4 years' time. Because unfortunately, maybe not compared to land-based projects, in our design phase, especially the concepting, we're 4 or 5 years out. So you need a bit of a crystal ball, and you've got to take a bit of a leap of faith going forward to sort of anticipate what it is that the guest wants today, but what's tomorrow's guest wanting as well.
That's a really tough kind of thing to have to think about. Working
because you've got to justify a case or an argument or whatever it may be, and then you've got to rally the stakeholders as well to sort of follow that direction. But it's great fun, and every day is a school day. So
yeah. And how do you actually get the stakeholders kind of on board with such kind of blue sky, maybe out of the box ideas?
I mean, the blue sky, I find that typically it's best to take, if there is a particular reference or something physical that you've seen, whether it's an attraction or event or whatever it is, just taking them physically there is the best way, because you can talk about how great you found an immersive dining experience or the newest theme park or whatever, but that's always going to be a very, it's going to be your own personal view. So to get sort of to rally more sort of champions around you, you need to just bring people with you to say, hey, look at this. Right, I think this could fit into what we're planning to do on our ship, but I need you to be my cheerleader as well. So come on, let's go. Which if you're saying to people that, you know, I want to take you to the latest theme park or this, that, the other, typically they say yes, because it's a fun thing to do. But it's also the only way that you can really pass on that knowledge of experience to those ultimate decision makers. Otherwise, we're just spending our lives in Google and Pinterest, which isn't really the way to design. So
I think bouncing in, one of the challenges we often get is people want something that's a world first. It doesn't exist anywhere on the planet and it's never been done before. But also show me the P&L and the robust business case and
yes,
all the data, and also all the research for it. And how do you square those two things at all? And one of the things that we sometimes like doing is just knocking it up and building it, and you know, seeing if the theory works. And you know, sometimes even the team like aren't completely sure. We recently built a fireworks blasting chamber where you don protective regalia, step inside a blasting chamber and stand at the center of an explosion. And funny enough, it's very, very, very difficult to get any buildings, any venues to give us permission to do this. So eventually when we're moving studio, we're like, this is it. We're going to build it. We got the drills out and sold some tickets online, opened the door, and lo and behold, Rosamund Pike was one of the first people through the door to test it out. She bought a ticket, and away she came. She had a great time. But I think Ben, you're inviting people to come and have things is a wonderful way to make those brilliant blue sky ideas a tangible reality.
Exactly. It's if the seed has already grown in your own mind, it's trying to plant that seed in other people, so that when you're in the room with other sort of key players and you're trying to sell to the ultimate decision maker, it's better that there's a group of you instead of just the one person saying, I think this would be great. Guys, no? Okay.
No, that's absolutely right. But really making sure that there's a great business model behind it, because, you know, we've seen so many things, the market's saturated with so many great ideas and concepts that are the same. And so I'm always looking for what makes you different. What's that differentiating factor that's going to give you that edge? And then, like we said, like what's the business model behind it? That's what it all comes down to. Is this realistic?
It's quite a mix, isn't it, then, that people have to balance with the sort of more pragmatic business case, and then also the creativity and also presumably some creative freedom as well that they need in order to create these sort of experiences. Mm-hmm. So what sort of advice would you give to people who are out there trying to come up with that kind of blue sky idea? Obviously, as Kimberly says, putting a kind of case study behind it and a business case study, but what else can they do to grab your attention?
Yeah, I think going and doing your research, really understanding what's out there right now and seeing what's working, what's not, why you're pulled to something, really creating something that you think the customer will feel an emotional connection with, because we're also divided. We get distracted in so many different ways. So what's really going to grab my attention and create that emotional connection? I think that should be top priority.
I think coming into this, I mean, we spend a lot of our time and advise a lot of people how to reach peak innovation, do genuinely innovative things. And I sit around the table a lot with people peering into the future. One of the things I always make the case for is to go back into the past and plunder it, because over the course of human history, the things that delight us as human beings don't changed remarkably, or at least if we still know about something that was making people smile 400 years ago, it probably will do a jolly good case of doing so. So one of my favorite books is called The Pleasures of London. And London is this great crucible of creative practice and new typographies of pleasure. It details all of it. And so you can learn, I'm obviously looking at Shakespeare at the moment. 200 years ago, there was a production of Dog Hamlet, and people went wild for it. It was Hamlet, but Hamlet had a dog going around on the stage with them all the time. And funny enough, it sold awful lot of tickets. Now, of course, by doing so, using contemporary techniques, contemporary technologies, and bring them in, you're able to deliver something that's completely different, that is unprecedented, that people really haven't seen before. And I think that's when things get really exciting.
Absolutely. And Ben, how do you kind of decide what kind of new trends and new experiences you're going to bring from, say, the visitor attraction world? How do you decide what you're bringing into a cruise ship? Because it's presumably a slightly different audience.
It's a slightly different audience, and it comes with slightly different challenges. I mean, as well as all the sort of data mining that we do, and then the sort of benchmarking across the industry against not just our direct competitors, but say also like land-based resorts and things like that. Let's say that we see something that we like, and let's use World America as an example. And one of the attractions we're putting on board in a new venue called the Harbour, the Cliffhanger, which is the first overwater swing at sea. That was basically a matter of seeing something and then going, how do we get that onto that? Now, considering where we first saw it, it was the Amsterdam Tower in Amsterdam, and this swing is positioned 100 meters on the top of this, I think what used to be a disused office building, and now they've repurposed it to be a museum, a gallery, a hotel in the middle, and then it's got obviously a bar upstairs, and that's where everyone goes, and then there's this attraction on the terrace on top. So again, we've gone out and saw something, and then it's a matter of thinking, well, how do we get that onto our ship? And physically we can place it on, that's not a problem, but our ship moves, it contorts, it twists, it's a steel box. It's also a steel box that's going against the winds. There's aerodynamics to consider. Oh, by the way, the waves move. So it's then like, and our engineering team, thank me for this, it becomes an engineering feat. Just how exactly do we get something that's so solid and so simple as an idea? And the simplicity of the idea is key. It is essentially just a swing that goes over the edge, and the thrill is not a roller coaster in Alton Towers or something like that. It's literally just over the edge. Oh crap, there's the water, and back you come. And that can be totally sort of, gauged to whether or not it's a toddler going on board, or, well, obviously someone of a certain height, or granny who just doesn't want, a high thrill adventure either. But yeah, it's the challenges then come about where just how do we get it to work on our ship, because this ship is essentially a steel box that's just painted beautifully and crafted beautifully by the outfitters in the yard, but it moves and it twists and it's not just something that we can put on land and then if there's something wrong we can just go back and fix it. No, the ship is also moving around the world, so how the hell do we maintain something like that that's constantly on the move? So but first of all, it starts with the simplicity of the idea. How do we get that onto that? And what do we need to consider?
Can that push you to new typologies?
Well,
an even greater thrill when
exactly. So,
pay more in storms.
Well, yes. I mean, I don't think the crew would thank us for that, but yeah, there'll be, did you ride it at 20 knots when we were going out at sea and there's a storm? No, safety might have an issue there. But yeah, for sure. But you imagine that if it was a land-based, so again, the one we saw in Amsterdam, that was great. You get great views at Amsterdam and you can see in the distance the planes coming into Schiphol Airport. For us, you'll be on this swing and you'll be leaving Miami, and then the next day you'll be in Ocean Cay, our private islands, and then the next day you'll be in Mexico in Cozumel, and then the next somewhere else it'll be a different view every day. And but again, the simplicity of the idea was key, and then we just got to figure out how on earth to do it.
But then presumably you need to have a really kind of strong sense that, yes, this is worth doing, because that's not a simple thing to just go, okay, we'll just put that in. It's a lot of work to make it fit.
Exactly. And in like the early, concepting stage, obviously we're trying to understand what's the cost of this thing. Is it something that we actually want to charge for, or is it something that we'll give for free? Again, some competitors of ours charge for every single item on board when it comes to these attractions. We have a slightly different model where we'd like it to be a bit more inclusive. We do have some things that are full charge, but we'd rather that the ship is busy and the guest is sort of like moving around the ship doing different things, instead of just everything being for charge, but then people sort of picking and choosing, and then, oh no, I'd rather not do that. So yeah, I think in the end, this might be something that's got a slight charge on it, but nothing, so drastic. And in fact, we want people to, again, go out in Miami and then the next day sort of come back and get a little sticker to say, I also did it in Ocean Key, then come back the next day and say, I did it in Mexico. And yeah, so it's and then it's on top of that, is it a first? Because in the cruise industry, we're always trying to sort of beat each other to be the first to do something. That's why you always see that we're the first people to have the longest slide at sea or whatever. So does it have, as well as an ROI, does it have any marketing value? Because that will obviously gain sometimes a measurable level of interest, or sometimes it's just a punt, it's a leap of faith. But at least it's something that you can talk about in the build up to the release of the ship itself, which we have done already. So,
I mean, this idea of actually being able to market a blue sky idea is actually quite important. Kimberly, how much do you think about that when you're putting together new offerings to guests?
Oh, always. I mean, actually yesterday at Area 15, we just did this amazing film shoot for our New Year's Eve experience this year, which is this grand masquerade ball that's taking place in the entire building. But we're constantly thinking about, what are new ways to market and how to really get the vibe across. Yeah, that's just number one, of course.
Yeah.
I think bouncing in on that, the joy of blue sky thinking, right, is you can market it terrifically. Everyone's hungry to know about what's novel, what's new, what's first. The challenge comes because people's expectation can either be remarkably high or it's hard to focus. They don't know what they're expecting because it's something that's never been done before. And we have the experience where quite often we'll work with food and drink in restaurants and theatre. And people have their budgets that they associate with a night out in the restaurant and a night out in the theatre. If you put them together in a sort of immersive dining experience, we as operators are, and I'm sure you have this experience, of combining all of those different things, the complexity of those systems intermeshing. But how do you justify the associated expense of that to the consumer, who might have, they might have bought the theatre tickets that before, and they might spend the restaurant on the night as well. So how do you, where do you give them? We all look at benchmarking documents a lot of the time. It's quite a different journey when you're a consumer paying the bill, and so I think that's one of the tensions that we're always trying to navigate. And it sounds like that's a shared interest.
Yeah, it's really tricky, isn't it? As you say as well, making sure that the guest expectation is like at the right level. You want them to be excited, but not have unrealistic expectations, because otherwise they're then just going to get disappointed in that. So it's quite a tricky kind of dichotomy that you've got to sort of work alongside. If we sort of go, okay, so obviously everything we're doing is to make the guest happy. What trends are you seeing that guests are particularly wanting at the moment? Kimberly, I'll start with you.
We're definitely seeing a rise in, digital overlay over physical experiences. So lots of AR now. We have a new experience called Bop Reach. When you enter Area 15, you scan a QR code and you are taken on a journey through Area 15 exclusive IP. So it's really deepening the experience for the consumer and the customer journey.
Sam, I think you're doing some work with sort of AR and things like that with the Museum of Shakespeare, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And also looking at this as a trend with some of the entries we've seen into the blue sky category. We've seen a lot of like fantastic AR categories. And also this sort of integration between and hopefully ever more seamless integration as well between the real world and the physical world, and then also content that's on a digital screen in the physical world, or interacting with one another. So those are some things that I've loved seeing on projects like Space Cart, coming through on Scaniverse and Playground as well. And I think where this starts taking you, which I get excited by, is accelerating the frictions between people. Why do we still go to physical spaces to experience things together? And why do we go to museums? And I think there's a value in looking at other people, looking at stuff or experiencing stuff, where what doesn't always happen, which I think is always best when it happens, is when you also get to talk to those people and interact with them. Maybe they become your friends. And if we can facilitate that through that integration, so much the better. And I think if that happens, and you leave your cruise, Area 15, whatever, any other experience you are with some new contacts, that's always a good thing.
Absolutely. Ben, what trends are you seeing with cruises?
I mean, well, when it comes to cruise, we're sort of, again, and this is the sort of crystal ball moment, that because we're so behind on land-based trends, just because of the design process, is I'll talk maybe about social gaming, which I know isn't a new trend. But I mean, it started off with essentially, this traditional game, or perhaps even a spectator sport, whereas now in London, there's everything from, okay, we've got the darts venues, we've got the shuffleboard, we've got the go-karting, we've got the golf, the mini golf, the top golf. Now we've got football, we've got Tocker Social at the O2, we've got Fair Game at Canary Wharf, we've got Boom Battle Bar, we've even got cricket. I'm very conscious how saturated the market is because I think we'll surely run out of games. But I think the constant use of repurposing what is essentially just a game that everyone knows, but then making it available to the masses is it doesn't seem to be slowing down. I'm just concerned that maybe the market is going to be saturated with just so many of these. But at the same time, there are lots of nightclubs and bars that perhaps we went to back in the 90s and noughties that unfortunately need repurposing. So at the moment, they're filling a gap, and for the generation that, unlike me, now go out more than I do, that's what they want. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how that evolves, and I think we're starting to see some things from some of the nominees this year. Maybe the most marketable one that everyone's seen is Cosm in Los Angeles, which is, if you couldn't afford a ticket to the game, don't worry, there is a venue somewhere with a massive screen. And I mean, a lot of the stuff that's on either Instagram or TikTok, you always think you're watching the game live or watching the UFC fight right by ringside, and then it comes around and there's just groups of people essentially just eating and drinking and being serviced. And it's a very simple idea, but it works, and I'm sure that will roll out as a model across the US, and God knows if it'll make it across here to the UK. And then I think, Sal, you mentioned before about immersive experiences and storytelling. I mean, on my bucket list now is Phantom Peak, and then the Escape Batman in Paris, because that's also a way that it's giving people a unique immersive experience, but they're not just going to it once, because the storytelling or the narrative or the characters or their pathway through the environment for these 3 or 4 hours will never be the same. They'll keep on coming back, and they'll always get that sort of return and repeat guest. So it'll be interesting to see if that keeps on going and going, which we'd love to do on board a ship, but it just seems to take up a lot of space. And we've got space on board our ships is at a premium. So
But I think like what you said is absolutely correct. I mean, experiences like Phantom Peak, like Cosm, it's really about building community, and that's such a trend that we're seeing right now, and something that, of course, we're really focused on at Area 15. You know, in a world where we're so divided, we're on our computers all the time, we're in our own worlds. I think there's just a craving for community, and those experiences for sure, and what we're building too, really focus on that. And there's a camaraderie. There's just a different type of thrill when you get to really experience it together and make new friends.
I think bouncing in also and reflecting on trends is sometimes if it's a trend, it's not blue sky thinking because it's already happened to be blue sky. It's not a trend. And to access what that is, you need to really trust your gut, because you'll be using your experience to tap into what's happening now. And for myself, trusting my gut, I'm so over all of the mindfulness stuff that has happened and exploded everywhere. I think a lot of it is commoditizing quite aggressively things that you can do for free, like mindfulness apps that teach you how to breathe or pray. Like, it's ludicrous. I think what's far better and far more honest, the things that I'm excited about is savoring things as the new mindfulness. I think it's far more purposeful. I think there's an degree of connoisseurship. There's true hedonism in it, which I think is to be vaunted. And hedonism, not in modes of excess, but a means of balance and insight. And I think so savoring is an exciting area right now.
Absolutely. And I think as well, you know, we are seeing, I think, this real yearning, as Kimberly was saying, for connection. And actually, I like this idea of, you know, let's savor things more as well. I think that's why people go to these experiences as well, don't they? They go to sort of enjoy themselves and have an experience that you can't get anywhere else. So your venue has to be unique in that aspect, because otherwise, why choose that venue over another one? So do you all kind of struggle with how to get people to come to your venue and not spend their money somewhere else, because there's so many options now?
Absolutely. I mean, I think Area 15 is lucky in the sense that we're really a platform. We have so many different businesses under one roof. So we really do have such a variety for whatever you're looking for. We're not just one silo. So I think that gives us an edge. But of course, we're in the most competitive market in Las Vegas. So we're constantly thinking about, content refresh. And that's one of the greatest challenges, right? How do you keep bringing people through the door? It's definitely a challenge, but it's also exciting.
But I think the thing that's amazing about someone like Area 15 is it's like a hyperreal simulacra of Vegas. It is like the quintessence distilled down into a turbo Vegas experience, which is exciting in a world where there's, we've all had a good long look at algorithmic sameness, why every coffee shop around the world looks the same. And it's quite boring. And, we're excited about things which are relocalization, but in a world where you're going for that hyper localization, so you have to go to a specific place to have it. How do you also ensure that it can justify that? So if you've got 4 days in one particular place and you go to one place, you get that experience. But also, where does a business model sit with that as well? Maybe it's not going to scale. Maybe you're operating it as a special lifestyle thing that is like driving your means of solving the problem of living. So I think there's some tensions in there, but yeah, I'm really into sort of local hyperreal simulacra, which is probably an anathema to you, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, cruises are sort of quite different because they are traveling among locations, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, well, we're fortunate that, I mean, one of our pillars is the flame, the quality of the itineraries that we offer. And obviously, when you've got 24 ships dotted across the world, we can take guests to the Far East, the Caribbean, the Middle East, obviously the Mediterranean, where our roots are, East Coast, West Coast now. I think we're going to Alaska as well in 2026. We're touching the South Americas. I think we're even touching South Africa on certain itineraries. So we're very global. So that sort of, for the guest, is, you know, that variety. And then with the types of ships we have, you know, we have 1,000, 1,500 guest ships, and then we also have 6,000 guest ships as well. So it's, you know, they have a plethora of choice based on whether they're traditional cruisers who, you know, liked it in the 90s into the P&O cruises, and, you know, everyone just did that, or if it's a family cruise who want to sail out of Miami and they're looking for something with a bit more thrill, a bit more of adventure, which is, you know, what our latest ship will be based on as well. So I'd say that's probably the one benefit that we do have. And then it's with this variety that we have, it's ensuring that, again, benchmarking against the industry, are we offering what everyone else is doing, if not better, or how are we differentiating ourselves from maybe a Carnival guest or Royal Caribbean guest or whatever it is? Because at the end of the day, especially for us in the cruise industry, there are enough guests out there, but let's make sure that we understand our demographic and offer what it is that they want, as opposed to copying someone else, because we don't want their guests perhaps.
Yeah, and presumably that's why being, you know, world first is so important, because it gives you that special something that goes, well, this is going to attract this type of person, and that's who we want to choose us over someone else. I'm interested, I feel like we talk a lot, particularly I think around sort of theme parks, about, but I think it applies to all industries really, this technology versus kind of story debate. And I feel like it's always kind of saying, you know, obviously story is really important, but when it comes to a blue sky idea, how important is the kind of technology involved in that, and how important is the story that this idea is trying to tell? Can one exist without the other? I guess it does partly depend on the kind of experience itself. But I'm just interested because I think things like AR are allowing so many interesting things to be told. But sort of how far can we push that technology? How far should we push it? Sam, I'm going to start with you.
There's a question there somewhere, and my I think depending on your starting point, you'll have a very different opinion. I always believe that story comes first. As humans, the greatest thing we do is exchange story, and the things that people most like doing in their leisure time is consuming stories as well. The technology is the medium, and will always change and will always be changing. You know, sometimes you can use it as a starting point to push the craft, but ultimately you want technology to be invisible.
Kimberly, how about with you and Area 15?
I think what Sam said is correct. You want it to be invisible. I mean, the story comes first. That's how you create the emotional connection. You know, but I think there has to be a marriage of the two. And also, I think, you know, with content refresh, you need the tech right now, because the consumer is very sophisticated. They've seen everything, they've done everything. They're constantly looking for something new. And so you need that. You need to keep the story fresh. I think it's the perfect marriage of the two, finding that balance.
Absolutely. Ben, what's it like on cruises?
I think, I mean, we're mostly utilizing tech to ensure that the guest journey is as seamless and frictionless as possible. You know, from all the way from like booking the cruise in the first place to booking itineraries or excursions or whatever it is on board. But then the day-to-day navigation of the ship, understanding when show times are, whether or not there's a seat available, whether or not you've put yourself on a waiting list for a restaurant and all of a sudden the tables come up, just dealing with your account. That's the sort of the easy sort of wins that we're trying to focus on to make sure that, the administrative part that, back in, again, in the 80s and 90s, everyone would have gone down and queued at reception. We're now trying to move out of, I'm hoping in the future the reception doesn't exist, because why should it? We're also, going to hotels for conferences and stuff like that. And sometimes we don't even see the receptionist. Sometimes there isn't one. You've just used a code or something to scan on your phone, and into the room you get. And everything just seems to figure itself out, and it's fine and it works. But then from a technology, maybe consumption part, it's the stuff that we're seeing on land in terms of shows and events and things like that is trying to make that integral to the shows that we offer on board. But then again, if something goes wrong, how do we look after it? Because we're stuck out there in the ocean. So it's making sure that operationally, can we manage it? And then have we got the crew on board that can actually maintain it? Otherwise, it'd be awful for us to, close down a theatre of 500,000 guests. We've, integrated in some, wow, amazing tech, but then we didn't marinize it. That would be our downfall. So yeah, slightly different in the cruise world.
Yeah, but it's really important to have that reliability, isn't it?
It really is, because the typical lifespan of a ship, for instance, is 30 years, and ideally we'd like to do the fit out once. Ideally, obviously there will be always trends and stuff, and we'll be updating areas and doing refits, doing dry docks and things like that typically take place every 4 or 5 years. But ideally, when we buy the ship for millions, billions now, however much it is, we'd rather make sure that the car that we've ordered has everything in and it works. Otherwise, as soon as the shipyard, the builders in these cases, hand us the keys, then it's ours. And it's also our problem if something goes wrong. So it's it's important to make sure that, again, when we're ideating 4 or 5 years out, that we're also thinking in this 360 view that, yes, that we want this shiny new toy, but how the hell are we going to maintain it? How are we going to look after it? What do we need in terms of crew training? Do we need extra manning in the space if we've got a new bar or whatever it is? And yeah, all these factors need to be considered. So
I was going to say my real hope for future technology goes back to some of the values, the things that Kim is curating. It's like, how can we get tech to enhance community and those frictions between people, and there's the ability to find people. And like, I know I'm not a member anymore because it was kind of becoming a sort of diminishing return. But I remember Soho House, it went for about a decade, and you would sit on this beautiful plump sofa with the group that you came in with and never meet anyone interesting at all, even though you saw swathes of beautiful, interesting, successful, attractive people walking around. And I think their use of actually a very, very basic app facilitated some of those interactions between people. I now have some very good friends that I met as a consequence. And so that's my real hope is it can just be a bit of a catalyst to interaction at a time when sometimes it might feel weird in a space going up. You might not want to be creepy with people, but when we're very comfortable interacting through the mediated and safer arena of technology. So I think that can be quite helpful.
Absolutely. So we've sort of spoken about the need to have a crystal ball and to look in the future. So if we are looking in this crystal ball, what do you want to see come out in, the future in 5 years' time? What's going to make your lives easier operationally, make things better for your guests? What blue sky ideas do you want, Kimberly?
I'd love to see tech that really helps more with content refresh. Right now we were really working on our offerings, changing Area 15 from day to night. And I think we have some experiences that really do that well using tech, like our portal, our 360 projection mapped room. During the day, it's very family friendly experience. At night, it turns into a rave. So I think that helps, but I want more. I want more help with that because I think that's so important. Having, we have such a great family market during the day, and then at night we're for adults. But what's an easier way using tech to change that experience?
Sam, anything else that you would like?
Oh yeah, completely. It's a bit of a niche term, but I'm really into reactive theatre. So it basically means you're going through the show, you make decisions, the totality of the show changes meaningfully based on what you're doing. And so many of the immersive shows are basically on rails. Whatever you do, it always ends up the same. And that's because there's a business model behind it. And it's expensive to have a multitude of different endings. But of course, with AI, it's much vaunted, doesn't always deliver, but this is a possibility, a meaningful possibility, particularly when combined with talented front of house staff as well. So we did a show like pre-Chat GPT where we made it's called the AI Banquet. We made models of Brits that were recognizable to an American audience. Which was Shakespeare, Darwin, Ada Lovelace, Mary Seacole, and Agatha Christie, although actually quite a lot of Americans thought Agatha Christie was American as well. And then is using a hand program AI plus really great improv actors meant that you got to meet them. And the consequence was very, very funny. And because you're meeting them in the context of a meal, you guests were able to come to the table with a lot of knowledge already. They knew, you know what you're doing when you sit down at the table. So you're able to have quite a lot of, we talk a lot about agency, and how we want guests to act and feel empowered. But what does that actually mean in the context of immersive? And I think that's reactive all the way.
And Ben, what do you want?
I looked back at my silly shopping list of wants, of which an indoor ski slope is one of them, but I'm not sure about that yet. But I think something that we perhaps Kimberly mentioned before was a space that offers flexibility. And I'm thinking, take the simple idea of an escape room, but an escape room that's in a venue that you go to it in the morning and it's one themed escape room, and then you go there in the afternoon and it's something totally different. This is all in mind with the fact that, again, our guests are trapped. They're on board with us for a week. And yes, we go to maybe a port in Mexico or somewhere in the Caribbean or whatever, but they've essentially come for the ship. So how do we keep their streetscape, their day-to-day fresh? But how do we do it in such a way that operationally we can sort of maintain it? Because again, space on board of our ships is at a premium. So how can we take a tiny little 3x3 space, but then keep on having guests, coming back? I did that challenge on Monday, but then on Wednesday there's going to be a different one, and I'll go back and do that one. And then by the end of the week, I may have found out that I'm on the leaderboard and I'm in the top 10, and I get to the last challenge, whatever it is. So it's figuring out stuff that's on land at the moment, but how can we do it in a tiny, teeny, little space? And also without any crew would be amazing as well. The less we can man it, the better.
I think, these are really interesting ideas. So everyone watching can go and, make these all a reality, and then it'll make all of your lives.
Exactly. I think the answers are in this group, so it's fine.
Yeah. Just send the ideas straight to you guys. No one else gets a look in. And we've kind of talked a lot about, everything that's exciting in the industry and, lots of interesting and exciting futures. But what is your kind of main challenge that you are kind of facing right now, Sam? What's the thing?
Well, quite often it's just ceiling heights in column jungles, and there's a lot of there's a balance between you can get the most beautiful spaces where there's no one, or you can get the most kinky, dog-legged, weird, subterranean, unusable spaces which are unbelievably expensive where there's lots of people. And that's it. Of course. So if we can change the fabric of space and time, that would be fantastic.
I'm sure someone will be able to do that who's watching. That doesn't seem too
engineering
difficult.
Challenge, that's all it is. Slightly bigger on a ship, but if you take away a column, then we're in a bit of danger that the ship might close in on itself. But again, it's just an engineering challenge. Someone will figure it out one day.
Good. Thanks, Ben. I'm excited.
So is kind of that space, is that your biggest issue, Ben?
I mean, it's been a constant throughout the marine industry, but it's also evolved. So we have always worked quite well and collaboratively with naval architects and with shipyards to constantly push the boundaries, because again, the sort of traditional cruise ship of or cruise liner, so to speak, from if we go all the way back from the Titanic through to the cruise liners of the 80s and 90s to where we are now, where you see sort of glass domes on tops of ships, of roller coasters, and so someone figured something out. So it's all sort of feasible. But in terms of another biggest challenge for us, I mentioned it before, is purely just predicting trends, and it's trying to get ahead of the game or ahead of the market or ahead of your competitor 4 or 5 years out, not knowing what they're doing as well. So it's quite challenging, but then it's about being adaptable, that if you get 2 years out and there is a new trend, or the owner in our case, because it's a private company, if they want something, okay, fine, how do we do it? How can we make it work? Because in my experience, there's not been too many failed projects, so to speak, because we've always found a way. It's an industry, it's been challenging, but everyone has always collaborated really well. We've always found a way.
Fantastic. Kimberly, is content refresh your biggest challenge?
It is. You hear me say it all the time, but I think continually building new experiences from scratch, and having the capital to do so, and then hoping that when that experience is born and alive, that it's still relevant. So.
Yeah, it's tricky, but I mean, you're all doing great jobs at it. So, just keep doing what you're doing and it's all gonna work out well. I just want to thank you all so much for this conversation. It's been great. Hopefully it has inspired everyone as well to go and sort of come up with new ideas to solve some of your problems. And I'm excited to see what everyone kind of comes up with. We are going to reveal the winners of our Blue Sky category next, so do stick around and see who has been chosen to win that category this year. And thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. And thanks for all the entries.
Everyone.
And now the winners of the 2024 Blue Loop Innovation Awards Blue Sky category. Third place, Invisar from Invisar. Second place, Michelob Ultra Lap of Legends from The Mill. And first place, Scaniverse 4 from Niantic. Congratulations to all of the winners.